Hello and welcome to RED's cinematography series, Behind the Look. I'm Nada Albright and I work with filmmakers for RED. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with cinematographer Bob Richardson and second unit director and cinematographer Rob Legato for their work on the Apple feature film Emancipation. Hey guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Bob, we are conducting this interview on the Amalfi Coast at the lovely Convento de Amalfi Grand Hotel. So you're currently shooting with Anton Fuqua on another feature, who was the director on Emancipation. So my first question is, how did you and Antoine initially connect for this film?
Phone call.
And?
It was amazing. I didn't want to do the film.
And you'd never met him before, like you hadn't worked before?
No, I didn't want to make the movie.
Really?
No.
Why not?
Why not?
I didn't like snakes or alligators.
Spiders, too.
And spiders.
How do you feel about him now?
Oh, he's like a brother.
I'm the snakes and the spiders.
Oh, no, I still don't like snakes and spiders.
But that's great. Bob, let's talk about the color palette and the desaturation. And was this an early decision for you?
It was an early decision to shoot the film in black and white with Antoine, but not the palette that eventually became.
Really?
That was much more about Rob helping.
Really?
And finding a space to be able to utilize color.
Okay.
Where it would sneak in. He developed the lookup table that gave us the red, the green, or whatever tone. But that was Rob.
I mean, part of it came out of they want to shoot in black and white, and I'm always think that you should shoot black and white in color so you could play with the contribution of the red channel, the green channel, the blue channel, and get exactly the black and white tones that you want, and you might want to change them per shot. And as we were doing it, we sort of start playing with mixing it back to color. So we start playing with all the different red, green, and blue channels to come up with a nice black and white image, and then just add back in this little touch of color, which made the greens kind of desaturated, but yet you could still see greens. Took a lot of the red out. And then in cases where we wanted to actually add red in, some blood shots or things like that, or the flag or whatever, we'd find another avenue, another sort of workflow to put that little bit of red back in it. So we adjusted it per, pretty much on a per shot basis.
And as far as the story goes, how does the black and white serve the story, and what was the initial, this has to be black and white?
Well, I think the story is black and white.
Okay.
It's about white people abusing members of the African American community.
Yeah.
So black and white was something we wanted to play with.
That makes sense.
Also, I feel that color was hallmark.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do a hallmark film. Whenever we were in the room with Antoine or Rob and myself, we'd bring them into the room and say, all right, here you go. This is what it looks like we have. Now take a look at what it looks like in color. Every time. Shut it down.
Is it just too much?
No, it's just the black and white element of it offered an authenticity to a time period. Also, it took the way we graded, and it is we here, so the way we graded was that Will became much darker in skin tone, where he has a much lighter skin tone, and suddenly he became much darker and more an original descendant as opposed to some movement.
It just felt more real. I mean, as soon as you saw it in color, it was like, oh, it's okay, it's good. And then you see it with this palette, and all of a sudden it has a kind of a power to it, or a poetry to it. It was the best way to describe it. And so it just made things just feel correct, and it suggested other things, and shooting in slow motion and other art that started to be incorporated because of the look of the movie. Everybody really liked it. I mean, we did it on literally the makeup test day, where we started playing with it. It was the first thing we did, and we started screwing around with it. And then when I got the black and white to something that I liked and showed Bob, Bob said, well, what if you put a little more color in it? And so we did. We just slid it back in, and all of a sudden it just fell right immediately. And then we start to, and as Bob likes to have a colorist on the set with him, so that he could shoot something and go see what it looks like, and then maybe make an adjustment, or if I have to go shoot something, say this is the kind of the palette we're going for in terms of the shot. And it was great to be able to color time the movie as you're going along with it. It worked out really well, I think.
I'd imagine. Did you ever play with the monochrome or consider using that? Nice.
The Firefly scene.
Yeah, and Firefly scene.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice scene.
It's a beautiful, I mean, the black and white on that camera.
But it's also amazing because the speed, when you can go to 5,000.
Really?
Yeah.
Done. There's no lighting. You don't have to do anything.
That's it. And that's,
Basically, you can almost work with the moon. It was like that little lighting. It was quite a remarkable camera. This should be.
yeah, we talked a lot about it before you were using it.
Yeah, and I thought we should. I was considering shooting only with that and then hand coloring the film.
Wow.
But
It costs a little more money than we
that's
have.
a little
Rob
bit more
was
money
like,
than we wanted to spend.
Can I suggest something here? Yeah.
Well, did you build your custom lenses with Dan Sasaki like you usually do with Panavision?
Yeah, we built lenses for the film. They were called RRs. And
What does that stand for?
Widowmakers. Because they're at like 0.9
Wow.
and 0.1. And they're really, they're very beautiful. But when you have that, you don't have nothing to do at night.
Wow.
So, but we didn't shoot many sequences at night.
No.
We shot them
Really?
during the day and
interesting.
altered them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let me ask you this. What was it in the lens that you're looking for, and did it pair any differently with a Monstro Ranger? You know, I mean, you'd done commercials with it, so you kind of knew.
Well, I've worked with the Red a lot.
Yeah.
So for me, it was nothing new. But I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Rob, what's your feeling about,
Oh, look at the time, Bob. It's really getting, I have to
how
go
do you feel
shoot
about
today.
the Red? I know
No,
you
I
do.
like-
About the red,
well-
Rob? Tell us.
Okay, sure. This is, how much time do you have? No, I usually, because I sort of grew up with Alexa and the D21 and all that stuff, so I was in that camp.
I remember
which
that.
which I still am to some degree.
Sure.
I mean, so I didn't use necessarily a Red very often, and so I was very comfortable with what I was comfortable with. And then Bob wanted to shoot it with this movie, and I wanted to entertain the idea and keep an open mind about it and see what the
Yeah.
real differences are. And then, at the end of the day, we shot a beautiful movie. So,
You did.
there's no complaints about it. There's no anything about it. It's like there is another alternative to like the cameras I like to use. And so now I could use a Red at any time, and intermix them
great.
and be fine with it.
That's brand new.
Yeah, it's like another tool.
It was not like that early on. It was
I thought that was really good.
that was good, Rob.
We'll keep that.
Diplomatic and
No, but it's not only diplomatic. It's wonderful that you said that because I'm much the same camp. I was
Yeah.
an airy person,
Yeah.
but I'm also a film person.
Yeah.
And
I always thought you was a film person when I first
And
started.
Bob likes to experiment. Like, let me try something crazy, something
Great.
new, something different, and see what it does. And
Yeah.
kind of go for it. Like I was always pushing for like on the Airflex to go for that it looked like film, and Bob would always go, well, let's make it look like what it looks like. Why are you trying to
I
take
love
away
that.
what it's good at and trying to force it into something else? And so he's very open to that. So it comes
Yeah.
with a hybrid. I'm still kind of, in a little bit of the film camp, although I like
Yeah.
shooting digitally more than I like shooting film because I can make the digital look the way I want to do. But, people like
Yeah.
Bob who grew up with film and a great cinematographer, they used to be able to light things and grip the shot to the point where they're doing kind of what we do in a DI. Not so many people can do that,
Yeah.
and I couldn't do that. But with a digital camera and a DI, I could kind of start to emulate the look of people like Bob and Caleb and Gordon Willis,
Right.
and all the people, Vittorio Storaro, all the people who grew up shooting film and were masters at it.
I could say
cheat.
Conrad Hall. I just feel like
and
you should
Connie
be
Hall,
added to that.
Road to Perdition.
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
great.
exactly.
I mean, it's just spectacular work that they can do in camera, and I have to, do some tricks to even play in that playground.
Do you think we're at a tipping point right now in the sense of just not feeling like we have to emulate, to your point, just shooting for the look that you want that serves the story?
it depends on, I think that a lot of filmmakers today they want film. Especially younger filmmakers want film.
Is it an emotional thing, do you think?
No, I think nostalgia.
I think to me it's a religion because
Sure.
I also, I mean, everybody's different. So I grew up always liking like 65 millimeter film. If I saw a David Lean film, there's something about that quality that was just, and that quality was very little grain. And so digital cameras, and you know the Area 65 and the red, the grain structure is such that the grain sort of goes away, and I like that as opposed to I like it grainy. You know, so I sort of dive into that. Look, I like the color palette of film. I love the way that looks, and I try to emulate that to the best of my ability. But I don't really care for the lack of quality that you get with not properly shot 35 millimeter film. So just shooting on film.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Just shooting on film really doesn't do anything.
Does it make you
have to
Bob
be really
Richardson?
good at it. No, you have to be great at it, like anything. I mean, you know, it's like playing a piano. The piano at some point is only as good as the person playing it. It's
Wonderful.
not. So I'm sort of in the camp of I'm a digital fan with a film look to it is what I like.
Yeah, HD has altered it. You know, you have HD monitors and people don't have to work anymore. They don't know what, I mean, meter readings are random. Most people don't use it. And they also use, I bet very few people even here use an eyepiece.
You use an eyepiece all.
I use an eyepiece even on digital.
Yeah.
For, you know, which is one of the, actually Red has one of the best eyepieces.
It's
the cleanest.
That's good. Yeah.
So I talked to that man over there to try to create the
Lauren?
yeah
There he is.
to get a better eye, you know.
Yeah. I was going to say,
and also
I remember that
to
conversation.
move it around. Like I'd like to take that eyepiece and put it on the Arri or whatever.
Okay.
Take you know, it's like the quality, because Arri actually suffers in that capacity. Also, there's a movement of how you eyepieces are generally too bright. This is all technical, so it's really, you don't have to be bothered with it. But
I like it.
eyepieces are too bright.
Yeah.
So I put an ND in my eyepiece for Arri because they don't go low enough
Oh, interesting.
for me. So I have an ND3 to get me back closer with an eyepiece. So that if I pull because I pull my own stops, because nowadays it's like you have to pull your own stops. You have to pull stops
Okay.
a lot.
Now, you had to do a big camera test in New Orleans, and you had 3 different cameras, and you covered them in plastic. Why were you pushing the camera so hard for that test? What was the
Well, the environment would push the cameras for that test. I mean, the high humidity, the rain that would come every so often, and the heat. It was pretty miserable conditions.
Oh, you had a hurricane too.
Yeah, we did have a hurricane.
Yeah, we forget about that. Yeah, we did have a hurricane. It just blew our set away, but
No,
it was
it
okay.
is, but it's also like the fan in the Red is loud. And you've shifted that to the fan being in a quieter place.
Yeah.
We wanted to know if it's going to shut down on us when you're sitting at 100 degrees and 100% humidity, and then you get rain, you got to cover it. Is it going to blow out? And that was a big consideration
It was
on
a
the
big
camera.
stress test that we did.
Yeah. And is the
stress
Ranger?
test.
Apparently it passed.
Yes, it did. So you ended up with Monster Ranger.
So, okay, with the main character, Peter, played by Will Smith, I just like this scene where he's talking to his fellow, their captive, and that weird, was that shot at night or in the day?
Night.
That was at night. So how did you manage to capture the close-ups with like so little light? In terms of, you talked a little bit about the way his skin tone is, but I just found it a remarkable, beautiful scene. So close up on him.
Where he talked to Ben?
Yeah,
I
about
was
the
a little
dog.
disappointed in that scene.
Why?
I didn't like the flicker of the fire.
Oh, why not?
We used fire, but I didn't think the quality of the flicker was proper.
Interesting. It's
So I'd
an
like to use
intense scene.
LED panels with fire quick times on them,
Yeah.
because I use that a lot of like on other movies.
But we
and
didn't
things like
have that, and we were moving, and I thought, fuck, this sucks.
Oh.
And
There
then
was apparently
I
a
used
money
real
issue
fire.
in this movie
What?
too. There was a money issue in this movie. They wouldn't let me do
Yeah, we
stuff.
didn't. Even though you're making a high level,
Yeah.
you constantly have issues with trying to get equipment and things that you want to have.
So you make choices.
They say yes to Bob. They say no to me. Though.
They don't say yes to me. I can't get the
They said
LEDs.
yes too many times to you, and then permanently no for me.
Yeah, yes. He did a lot of that shooting. Not that scene, but I mean a lot of the shooting, and it was always a battle for equipment and people for him.
What about the drone shots? Did you guys put Raptors and Reds on the drones?
Actually, yeah,
Those were
he did a majority of the drone work.
insane. The opening shot is
Yeah, a lot of the there's a lot. That was part of the test. Bob invited me out to shoot a test. We went location scouting, and we were location scouting with drones. And then I went in my hotel room and I put the drone footage with the Shining because it reminded me of The Shining, and it somehow became the vocabulary of how to establish what it feels like to be in this sort of environment. And so it became kind of the thing. Well, every time we went to a new arena, we would do a drone shot, and The Shining and that kind of all that stuff kind of felt right for this.
You should show that video.
Yeah, I still have it actually. It was one of the things that
that's cool.
I was editing it and then it sent it to Bob. I said, "Can you take this and change the color?" And here we're still playing with the color palette a little bit before.
Oh yeah, but we were playing in a massive way where scene would turn gold.
Oh, wow.
Or go blue.
And then we did like a Technicolor version or a Technicolor version of just the greens with nothing else. So we were playing with it, and it was all from footage we shot on location.
But also airboat footage.
Yeah, airboat footage from my iPhone. Just when I was doing this, I had to add the roll in it because it reminded me of the opening of The Shining. So it's funny, and Antoine really liked it, and so it became kind of a different tone to the film of we're not really making kind of an action-oriented film. There's some sort of poetry that wanted to be introduced in this that maybe that had some influence on it or not, or when you're looking for the tone of a film, you discover it in some ways and say, what's that one? It's kind of like the first day of doing the lookup table for the movie. It just sort of slid into it, said that's it.
Okay.
And it didn't quaver over it at all. It was just like that's
well,
what
the
we're
producers,
doing.
Todd Black came up to me and said, "You're not really making a black and white movie, are you?" And I went, "No, we're gonna do color."
Bob never lies.
And I never lie.
Never lies.
We did add color.
Cinevo mission.
There's color in
We
the
shot it
movie.
with a color camera.
And Antoine was like, "No, we're not going to hand in a color movie."
How about the dailies? Were you able
All
to...
black and white. I mean, all the same.
Okay. So there was no shenanigans for the dailies.
Well, the dailies looked like the movie. And they just gets refined.
Because you were doing it on set, so...
And we actually did what I like to do, is we spend so much time, only really on Bob films, we spend so much time doing dailies with the same, essentially, equipment that you're going to do DI, that why don't you use what we already did, because it's every day it's Bob's influence on it. I want it like this, I want it like that. So he's really color timing it as we're shooting it. And I had a company 3 use the actual dailies color corrections as the basis for that, because we had all the windows, we had all the creative choices that were built in. Once you see it laid out, then you start to balance it per the scene. In dailies, you never really have all of the shots to create the scene. You have it in a kind of a patchwork format. But it became the movie. I mean, the movie looks very similar to the rough cut of the movie.
Wow. You sort of have to understand that when you grade a film on set, I'm doing windows, isolating faces, brightening or darkening, but slowing down the backgrounds, et cetera. But you have to do it for every take and every shot. So, it's a long process, but what happens is when you go into the DI, we suddenly are in a position that I spent really probably 5 days in the DI.
No kidding.
Well, it goes quickly because you did a lot of the creative
Because it was all done prior. And then we would,
That's nice.
did get as we were going along, there'd be cuts coming in, and then we'd shift the cut in terms of trying to balance the cuts.
Like I noticed on that scene where Ben's character is chasing Peter, Will's character, and there's it's not bamboo, but it's this really harsh, straight up, and the horse is running, and it's just really fast. It's very, but
By era,
tell me about that scene.
we went 48 frames per second, and then some of it was brought down to 24, which changes the shutter, and it's got the.
Yeah.
And we found that, I was going we should be able to go 48 frames per second, go to 24, and it'd look just the same. And it was like, no, that doesn't quite work that way. And I was like, but it looks a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so then we integrated that concept into, we shoot things at 48, knowing that they'd pick up that speed,
and
which
96.
is, what?
In the battle, a lot of times you shoot
All that
96.
stuff was all 48.
What was 4896?
A lot of stuff
All
in the
the
battle.
All the
A lot
battle.
of the running.
Yeah.
All 48 and then taking it to 24, so it'd have that. It's almost a Private Ryan.
Yeah.
But it's not quite a Private Ryan.
Yeah, it's so interesting because he starts off running, obviously, and then you have the swamp. I mean, that's just a character in and of itself. And that's where I see some of the,
Well, it's a barrier. So he leaves one environment, and then here's like essentially what the prison wall is, and you could try to dare to go over it
and you can see the,
at your own peril,
yeah.
and that's what essentially happens in the story and happens in real life. So
yeah, and you can see the freedom of the birds, and there's just some really beautiful moments.
The birds, the first bird shot was done on a Scout
Really?
with an
An
iPad.
yeah. And that became an integral part of it.
Really?
We made this little edit to the music and everything like that, and that was like
And then
everyone,
suddenly it's,
oh my God. And
it's in the movie.
And then it was like, well,
I loved
we
it.
can't actually use it, because the thought came up is, well, can we use that footage? It's like, no, not really. It's too skunky. But and also what we did too, which also makes it interesting, in this color palette that we came up with, if you shoot a blue sky, you could take the blue sky and make it black, and then add just a little bit of color in it.
Really?
So there's a lot of scenes in there where you're going to see the sky where it's pretty dark and contrasty. It's all because of this methodology that we came up with that makes, and then I actually used it on another movie to do actually day for night, where it looks like it's a nighttime sky because of the trick we played with on this movie. And Antoine really loved that. He wanted,
wanted more of it.
He wanted more of it, and the only time I couldn't do it effectively is when there was a gray sky instead of a blue sky. Blue sky really made it work, and it required a lot of little post work. We had to denoise it and things like that because we're really pushing the mechanics of the film.
Which is an interesting concept, because when you're dealing with the level of information on a red, or like the Alexa 65, you can go deeper into destroying something. And
What do you mean by that?
well, you can push further.
Okay.
It's like you take
On film, you couldn't do it.
and 35, you wouldn't get away with it. And with the first Alexas, you wouldn't get away with it. Then when you went to the Alexa LF, you could get into it more. But it's like, how far can you push an image?
Yeah.
Like you were just saying, oh, it's shooting on that. You can go into a single on this camera or that.
Oh, the Raptor here.
Yeah. But you can't do that with a lower.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You actually are multiplying whatever the sins are that are built in that are invisible at normal thing, because that's people associate with as a normal thing, and it doesn't look very grainy. It looks beautiful. As soon as you start multiplying it to get an effect, you're also multiplying the grain or the noise or whatever makes up that channel. And so you need the best. That's why 8K. You get the best information possible, and then because we were pushing it so hard, you also have to then just do a little noise reduction. So that's part of the process of the dailies, is that I could push all those things pretty far and then add noise reduction so it looks perfectly normal when you look at it and doesn't look like it has these sins, but you have to do that. And if you didn't do it, people would go, well, I don't really like the way that looks.
It's like a gut.
Yeah, it's a thing. So you make it invisible. You make the manipulation or the multiplication of all the sins actually kind of go away. And those are the tricks of the.
I love it. Well,
Make
one thing
the
I want to bring up
sins go away.
I sort of changed the way I work because of Bob, because Bob does color dailies. Visual effects people can't stand that. They hate that because when they just get the pristine image and they try to do their work on it, and then it doesn't cut into the movie because it looks bizarre compared to this, beautifully timed movie.
But I should add here that not only is he second unit director, cinematographer, but he was in charge of the VFX on the film. And also he's a 3-time Academy Award winner.
yes, as are you.
Bob is.
That's 6 right here.
But we've shared Academy Awards on the same films.
No, Aviator and Hugo.
Well, Aviator, I didn't win, but he won.
He won. Yeah. But you guys.
And then Hugo, then we both won.
That's right.
Let's talk about Aviator again.
Yeah, Aviator.
Which is the first time we worked together, actually.
Okay. Oh, that was the first time you two worked together?
And that was shot on film.
Okay, and you were saying that it's different when you're grading that way.
Well, Bob grades, he wants color dailies. He wants the dailies to have all the same influences that would be for the final shot. And he wants, the windows done and things like that. He wants the image the way he sees it, which makes it impossible to do a visual effect and then color time it by eye exactly the same way because there's too many steps involved. So I started to change how I worked, and in particular on Hugo, where they used a base light instead of something that I could easily acquire, is I had to get a base light and get the Dailies color correction. So I would send out a shot, visual effects would come back, and then I put exactly the same grade on it to cut it back into the movie. So when in the case of Marty, when he was watching the footage, it didn't leap out as something that would get overly criticized and not feel like it's part of the movie.
Right.
Even if it was okay, because you just can't tell, because there's so many different ways that it doesn't match the rest of the footage, because there's things on it. There's windows, there's dynamic color corrections, there's all kinds of stuff, and the only way to really do it. So now I've changed sort of my methodology, which is fairly still unique, is encouraging people to do more what Bob does and actually color time the film to look like the movie, because you make better editorial decisions when it looks like the film.
Sure.
There's a certain poetry in the way it looks that gets kind of hidden when you see a generic version of the movie, where it's not really color timed beautifully. It's, you know, so it's missing a real key component. And then when I go to put my work in as a visual effects supervisor, it's too pristine, it's too something, and you really want it to feel like it feels like the rest of the movie. You don't want it to be seen, it wants to be invisible. You know, even when I shoot second unit, I don't want to make it my version of the movie. I want to make it the version of the movie that Bob is shooting, so it feels like it's all one movie. Same thing with the effects. So now I make the post-production actually carry the same color corrections that Bob has, so that when it gets put into the film, and we preview the film, that is the movie. And then now that we can take those color corrections and bring it to the DI as the basis, as the level one of it, and then Bob can color time a movie in 5 days instead of 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or convince the colorist to do it a particular way, or you don't have to prove the point anymore. It's like the proof's in the pudding,
That's
and it
amazing.
looks like the movie.
What about Antoine on those? Does he sit in on the color time as well?
Yeah.
So
He came in and was very specific in changes.
really,
Yeah, sometimes he would make choices that I didn't agree with, and it would shift the way it was done.
like in what way?
Like he would say, all right, I want this side of the face brighter, and so they make this side of the face brighter. And I was like, no, why don't we just brighten the scene? And so the whole scene feels consistent.
Yeah.
And even if it's a little brighter, get what he wants, which is more the eyes, the opening scene with the family. So he lifted
beautiful.
it. He was, it's like 2-point difference of what film would be. Because I still talk to colorists like it's points. And
That opening scene was beautiful. You talk about just
it's almost like, it was almost.
where
like
they're in the house.
When
just walking.
there's no lighting.
That's what I mean. It's this
very
small house with a door.
That's all we did was hit the background.
That was it?
Pretty much.
Through the window, maybe.
Yeah. But nothing really.
She was beautiful.
There's no lighting inside the room
I
itself.
try not to light that much.
Yeah.
I try to use as much as I can normal lighting. In this film, I had to do a lot of
Why?
sun.
Oh.
Hate sun. I had to live with it
Oh,
because
interesting.
we'd start at 10 or 11 by the time we're shooting, and you're dead overhead.
Oh.
Yeah.
And there's no way to get a backlight, or you're just dealing with top light.
So what
And
do you
then
do?
made it.
How to embrace it.
Yeah,
Okay.
embrace it. You have to make your enemy your friend. And it's like, so then it became something that we adjusted to as often as we could.
Yeah.
But when it was possible to alter it to it. And I think actually it added an element of authenticity to the image because we weren't.
It looked better also. It kind of diminished a little bit through the heavy lookup table and the heavy color processing. It seemed to look better. When it was
isn't that
just
interesting?
normal, it looked pretty funky. And
We
then
had a
all
lot
of a sudden,
water too, so you had a lot of reflecting off. I mean, I imagine there was some of that.
Do we have a little
Well,
water?
the swamp.
I don't think we had a lot. Oh, a little bit.
Yeah.
a lot of water in the
me.
air, that's for sure.
Okay, so I have to say that one of the many sequences that we're talking about, the Union camp, once the character comes into that Union camp, I mean, and I want to marry this with another question that I forgot to ask you, was when you're talking about the color palette, you must have had conversations with the production designer and the costume designer about these big shifts in terms of, or no? Like, how did that work with their, like with the Union camp was just pretty...
intricate.
One of the things they see
costumes.
dailies, and they see what the film is looking like, and what so I mean, it's not quite a shock that it's like, how come it looks like the way here, and that's what I want, and then how come it looks that way in the movie?
Yeah.
They do kind of see.
There was a
the
bigger
movie
issue
you're making.
with Aviator.
Yeah.
Really? Why?
Because that was a color film, and you're dealing with three strip Technicolor look, two Technicolor look, one.
Yeah.
It's like we dealt with so many different looks on Aviator, which came out of Marty's wanting to do movements. And this, they had a palette. In our palette, we just worked the palette, and they had to deal with it. A lot of the camps that you're talking about, like I did a series of sequences in that. But Rob did a lot of the material that really sets that camp up, which is why when you go like, he directed it and shot it. It's like, what?
Oh, I'm telling you though,
Very nice of you to say that.
What?
It was nice of you to say that.
Well, it's true. It's like a lot of that stuff, we utilized.
Yeah.
And it became the element that made the camp feel rounded.
It really does. It's such an interesting part of the movie because the tensions all throughout, this moment, and then you only feel relieved for about 1 second, and then you realize what he's now gotten himself into.
Well, you need the roller coaster to make the harsh parts feel more harsh. I mean, you need a little lull before you get into. I'm like, it can't all be at 100%. It's got to have a little bit of a rhythm to it to make a contrast.
He did that, but he also did a lot. We conceived the battle sequences originally as being one shot.
Yeah, tell me about that. I want to know
no
about
cuts at all.
Oh.
So it would do what you saw was we left the exit of one. There were some other scenes that they want to put in, but as Will's marching out of the position when you saw him, it connects to the movement that goes back over as they all break into a romp over the top of the snipers.
Yes.
And it goes around, all the way around, until it comes over the top of the Confederates and down and into Will in the middle. One shot, that's the end of the battle.
Okay.
Yeah,
What'd you end up doing?
I previs that as one shot, and in the process of prevising it, I wrote to Bob and said, I'm gonna need a cable cam for this. There's no way I can shoot this
Cable cam.
without a cable cam. And because we said, okay, we'll do it with a drone. We had a whole drone team.
Like
and
a
everything.
3-point?
And it was
No, it was multiple.
Multiple.
Yeah, there was multiple joints that I had to devise how we put together, and I had to go to Bob to sell the absolute
cost.
dead no of we're not doing
cheap,
cable
yeah.
cam. Absolutely not. We're not doing this cable cam. It's like we have no choice.
And I go to Antoine,
absolutely doing it.
Antoine, we need to have the cable cam. All right.
So,
Chris, we need to have the cable cam. All right.
and
Works out.
it was fun with.
But then they cut it.
Yeah, with the editor.
We started to
Conrad.
get in the middle of it, get into the battle.
Yeah.
And we found other shots that we wanted to really push and play with the color, like Will
it's
flipping
really-
down into the water. And the water was actually red. So we had it was blood. And then by that point, we knew our color palette.
Yeah.
And then we could pull it out. So we'd add extra blood to be able to bring.
And the cable cam shots were cool, but they became more interesting when it got intercut and not kept as one. And the first time we saw the battle was everybody's very nervous about the battle. How much time it would take to actually shoot it, how to stage it, and also make it look like something you haven't really quite seen before, because there's all these references to movies. It wanted to be a little more poetic too. It didn't want to be just a full-on battle. It seemed inappropriate. It seemed like it was a journey more than it was just like, okay, here's a hardcore battle.
It was a departure from what we usually see, a welcome departure. I mean, it was more personal.
Yeah.
The other truly mesmerizing scene for me was coming upon the house on fire and the horse coming by. So
Well, the horses on fire was Antoine saying,
Really?
I would really love to see horses on fire.
Oh, no problem.
And then we're going,
Sure.
that's a good
We'll
one.
have to find a good horse that's,
But it was
away the
linked.
glue factory. So that we could,
But it was linked to the idea that Will had been in the, basically dehydrated, beginning to hallucinate, and this horses come by, and he said, "Yeah, we can do that." And so the horses came on fire, and we knew we were going to a house on fire.
My middle name, sure. I could do that.
And then we did. We did a lot of firework. I mean, the interior is primarily lit with fire from the outside.
really?
Yeah, real fire, special effects.
But we couldn't get anywhere near the house. It had to be
kidding.
outside
You had to
the
do it
house
from the
because
outside.
it's a historical landmark, so
Yeah.
we can't actually.
Wow.
So you can't touch the physical property with
So
fire.
real
It could be
fire outside
around
of the
it, yeah.
practical.
But if you notice, it's a one shot.
Yeah.
In the interior, everything was lit from outside
beautiful.
to the fire. And that's the sensitivity of the
Yeah.
And you see a little
Of the
bit more of the
camera.
color inside the house. There's a little
Yeah,
more
sometimes we just pump.
which was kind of
That's why it's kind of an interesting thing. It's not just a hard set like this is the. You adjust it as you need
there's
to
like
adjust it in the film.
food, and it's like this weird, all of a sudden, this
Yeah.
pocket of civilized, or
It's also
seemingly.
you try to work with emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
His
what I mean.
perception is altered, so the perception of the film or the color palette is altered. And then if you just do
I
it,
felt like that.
because it feels like the movie, it's invisible. It just comes and goes as you think the film is coming and going. It's not. That's why it's a very sensitive sort of art form more than it is a technical journey. It's you change your rule book
Yeah.
as needed for effect. So
I love it.
You write that down when you go to like Antoine. We'll change it emotionally.
well, when you say that, who's
"Oh,
going to say no?
Who's going to say
Yeah,
no?
the hell with
no to
that.
that.
We want it technically correct. We don't want it emotional. No, he loved all that stuff. I mean, that's why he was great to work with. Is he wants you to help do that, and that's what he's after. And he lets Bob and I suggest something, and they judge it whether he likes it or not. But you can't really do much of that if the director doesn't want it. If you're fighting what you want or what you think the film should be from what
Which
the
is why
director-
Rob's here,
Yeah.
working with Antoine again.
And there's no alligators or anything on the Amalfi Coast.
No, and he's not doing visual effects right now.
But that's kind of nice, isn't
Yeah.
it? Not to.
I love that.
I'm sure you can previs in your mind no matter what.
I previs occasionally even just for myself, just
That's
to
right.
figure out what I'm going to shoot
As a
on the
director.
day, which helps me sort of take be relaxed when I walk on there because I kind of have a sense of what I would do and all that stuff.
That makes sense. And so that's how you guys ended up here with the feature you're working
Equalizer.
on now, the Equalizer 3.
Bob got me on Emancipation. He called up and wanted me to,
No one wanted to hire him. He's too expensive.
but I'm nice to work with.
But I like him.
So I've heard.
Very, and
So
very
I get and
economical.
also I get 10% of his salary. We don't
very
talk to anybody
we
about
didn't talk
that.
about that.
I'm his agent.
Oh, there you go. Well, you
talk to
guys
my
are
wife
awesome.
about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, actually, I don't get 10%, so don't believe that.
We believe that you don't.
I'd like to get 10%.
Well,
But
Don't help.
somebody gets 10% because you asked me to be on the film, and somebody who
Not me.
gets it.
well, I got to interview you guys like 100 years ago with Josh Pines on a panel for Aviator. So it's been a long time, and it's been a pleasure getting to sit with you again. And thank you so much for
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry.
hanging out. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Your pleasure?
It's my pleasure. Well, thanks for getting me the gig too.
Yeah, I don't mind.
I'd give you 10% if I had
But
it.
I also asked if I could bring you to this.
Yes. you did.
Because I thought it'd be very important.
I think it was very important.
No, this is my homeland.
Yeah,
My,
that's right.
My grandparents came from here.
That's wonderful.
I didn't mean that. I meant here in this interview.
Oh, that too. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
It's okay. That's how we get along.
I'm pretty
my
sure. that-
grandparents didn't stay at this
He
convent.
does do some really bad shots, though. Aside from the
Bob is
the
so
really,
kind about it too. If he doesn't like something,
No,
he
yeah.
just won't even tell you. He'll just
Rob, that sucked.
he'll
Couldn't
compliment
fucking
you to
tie
death
it in.
because he likes to encourage. That's his.
Yeah,
that's
I'm very
Bob's
good at
middle name.
encouraging.
I think that's a good way to encourage. That's what I've always
So
heard.
any of you who shoot with me know that will be very honest.
Yeah.
If this looks bad,
And encouraging. And encouraging. Did I say it to the right
It
camera?
precedes you. It does.
Bob is very
I'm a
encouraging.
bad man.
What's that? You're not that bad. I mean,
Well,
it's about as
do have
bad
my
as I've ever
issues.
seen, but it's not that bad. I mean, it's still you can
I
still
don't know. I've
stay.
gone some HR, so well, yeah.
Yeah.
I recall
The
that.
only way to help is that Bob has to become the HR agent.
Yeah.
That helps.
We could
Yeah.
lessen the severity of the crime.
That's true.
I guarantee you the pleasure here is all mine. This has been so much
Anyway.
fun.
All right.
Yeah. You wouldn't say that if you were working on the movie.
You
My
wouldn't say that,
God,
yeah.
you guys are amazing.
Do you have a smaller slate or is that?
I know. Do make me snort.
It's a. Aqui, duas, três.